Australians be prepared for having their faces scanned to use social media?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight we have a guest who is no stranger to Cafe Locked Out, Morgan C Jonas. How are you, mate?
Good, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Nice to have you back. Very well, thank you. I want to start. Oh, it's always good to have you on. I want to start on a very serious note. I want to play a video, and I want to get your reaction to it. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but it's called Mr. Magoo's Holiday Vlog. Let's play it.
Oh, this isn't work. G'day, knuckle draggers. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners. Oh, sorry, wrong country. I should have realised that China doesn't put up with that kind of crap. It's just so wonderful to be standing here on the Great Wall of Communism, especially when you're a communist. Now, President Xi and myself had a wonderful dialogue where I just sat there for half an hour with my communist nose firmly planted up his supreme ass. Here's a couple of highlights from our historic exchange.
夺走了30余万人的宝贵生命。
Oh, gee shucks. Thanks, Supreme Leader, Grandmaster Z. I've been practicing my Chinese since my last visit. You want to hear it?
210多个国家和地区。
What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
So I want to stop it right there. So Morgan, I love Danger Dan. His style of comedy just reminds me of Mel Brooks for some reason. I don't know why, but I want to get more serious note. We are a serious podcast. Your reaction to Elbow's recent trip to China. And I heard he went with Dan Andrews.
Right. Well, my first reaction is that he's standing on the Great Wall of China addressing the press, representing Australia, wearing a polo shirt and a baseball cap. I'm not sure if that's sending a serious message to the world that Australia is here in the international arena as a legitimate competitor. So I'd say that his casual attire there, not up to scratch in terms of the representation to demonstrate seriousness that is very much needed by Australia at this moment of time, given the volatile state of geopolitical affairs and so much more around the world. But really, to unpack Albo's trip, I think that Albo has told many lies to the Australian public. Albo's made remarks to the effect of Australia's relationship with China being critical to our national security, and also securing our position in our immediate geographic location with our neighbours. Now, what Albo won't tell the Australian public about are, of course, the countless amounts of Chinese Communist Party spies that are routinely conducting surveillance operation on the Australian public. He won't make mention, of course, of the communist warships that routinely show up in Australian waters unannounced, much to the grave concern of Australian citizens here at home. He won't make mention of China's debt trap diplomacy via the Belt and Road Initiative that has buckled one Indo-Pacific nation after another, leading to the construction of infrastructure that many speculate could be used down the track for a variety of different Chinese communist military outposts. And Albo has the audacity to get up on a stage and say that this relationship is bringing goodness and prosperity to the Australian people, when looking at our trade agreement with China. And by the way, all the Tony Abbott fans out there, you can thank Tony Abbott for ushering through CHAFTA. That was the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement. We've all but sold out our industries, thus creating further threats and instability, not just regionally, but to our supply chain. So, Leon, overall, I think that Albo is leading the Australian people down a garden path. Communism is not our friend. Communism is a demented, sick and twisted mind virus that has a tendency of sucking the soul out of any nation that allows it to permeate throughout its population. And I have the utmost respect and admiration for the Chinese people. I've been to China many times, but people are people, and nobody can survive the mind virus of communism. And that is what I think is the real enemy here. Not China, not the Chinese people, but the fact that communism reigns supreme in that huge, vast land that happens to be the second biggest economy in the world, with the world's most populous military.
Morgan, do you think our relationship with the US has been downgraded to the point where they're no longer our primary ally, and now we're aligned with China in lockstep with communist China?
I think we run the real risk of that happening, Leon. The United States is still our greatest security partner, but of course our biggest trading partner is China. Australian markets dependent on the Chinese consumer and commercial markets. Of course, we saw when ScoMo made a few remarks during COVID, China at the stroke of a pen was able to shut down our wine industry, shut down our beef industry, our barley industry, because those industries, of course, to China are interchangeable with markets from foreign nations. So to place such a great weight on this one trading partner poses a risk to our supply chains and our security, to the likes of which no Australian deserves. And the greater extent we see Albanese making these false remarks in an apparent bid to cozy up even further to President Xi and the Chinese Communist Party, the greater extent we think to ourselves, well, what is really going on here? We know that Donald Trump does not respect Anthony Albanese, nor should he. Of course, that meeting at I think it was the G7 summit, was cancelled. And it's very concerning because, of course, with America, we share great democratic values and have so much in common. But I'm sad that Australia is heading down the road of communism. And in many ways, Australia is starting to embrace the values of this soulless death cult So I'm concerned about it. But as it stands at the moment, no, the United States still our number one security partner, China our biggest trading partner. But that's not to say this will be the case in the years to come, Leon.
I guess, do you think
Yeah.
the fact that he hasn't met with President Trump yet, he's met with President Xi, so Trump's been in office for over 6 months now, he hasn't met him once. I think there's been a downgrade in the AUKUS alliance. I think Trump has raised the fees on Australia. I'm not 100% across that, but these are all appear to be ominous signs that we are now more in China's sphere of influence than in the United States sphere of influence.
Well, it's
What
true.
do you make of the AUKUS alliance, the latest development there?
Well, I think it's an indictment on the absence of leadership here in Australia. But we don't have strong leadership that values our strategic and military alliances, Leon. Of course, the events of World War II and the shared military operations between US troops and Australian troops really paved the way for America really securing that number one spot as Australia's greatest partner. And every time our government falters, whenever remarks and of course these unfounded and baseless criticisms are made from whether it's our Prime Minister, his administration towards the Trump administration, it actually creates separation between Australia and the United States. And I think that is at odds with the will of the people. I think if most Australians were to take a poll who they would prefer to be Australia's closest partner and ally, and there were two options, United States or China, I think the responses would be overwhelmingly USA. So to answer your question, Leon, the AUKUS state of affairs is indicative of a weak government leadership that is cowering and bending at the knee to communism.
Do you think we have Kevin Rudd as the ambassador in Washington, D.C.? This is a man who has previously insulted President Trump, the President of the United States. Do you think that's had an impact on AUKUS, on tariffs, and all these things? Or do you think it's somehow been separated from that? The Trump administration's not taking that into, factoring that in when they're making their decisions re Australia?
I think the Trump administration is absolutely factoring it in, Leon. Donald Trump, as he's demonstrated over the years, is a businessman who places an extraordinary emphasis on relationships. He's been that way his entire life. You can hear early interviews with Trump early in his career speaking about relationships all the way down to taxi drivers and the guys who run the local convenience stores. So he is a relational man. And quite frankly, if people don't make an effort to get along with him, he won't make an effort to get along with them. And it may sound a bit simplistic to some people, especially through the lens of geopolitics, but I do believe that that is how Trump has been throughout his career and his life, in his personal life, and that's how he is now. So I think Kevin Rudd should have admitted that he made a mistake. He should have made a public apology and resigned. And our current administration should have recognized the disastrous risk to US-Australia relations and sacked Rudd from his post out of respect for our greatest ally. And the fact that hasn't happened, I think Donald Trump interprets that as a sign of disrespect, and he's not somebody to disrespect. And you saw what happened in the meeting with JD Vance and President Zelensky when Trump felt he was being disrespected. He fires back. But you know what? That doesn't always happen in public, and it doesn't always happen with words. It could happen behind closed doors with his administration team. And I can guarantee you the conversation would have come up, and Trump's attitude was probably like, "Oh, Kevin, he's the guy who said all those nasty things about me, right? He's the guy that accused me of doing A, B, C, and D. And why should I meet with the Prime Minister, if they're going to disrespect me?" So The answer, Leon, is yes. I believe it. I believe these characters have affected our relationship.
I would say, not only does Donald Trump not care so much about Australia at the moment, but I don't think it's clear to me, and this is conjecture on my part, that the current Prime Minister Albanese values the relationship with the United States. He places more importance. You can hear me now? I was just going to say that I think, and this is conjecture on my part, I believe that the Prime Minister doesn't value the relationship with the United States. I really think that he wants to align us with China. He places China before the United States. He wants to make a realignment. That's my opinion in any case.
I think
Morgan,
your opinion is correct.
I want to move on. I want to just over to domestic matters. Earlier this week, I've got it here. I'm going to. One could be forgiven to think. One could think that this is like a church service. Let me play it here.
Yeah.
You'd think it's a Catholic mass, but it turns out that it's not. Let me just turn up the volume.
Yeah, a lot of them look bizarre. Yeah, it is.
Now, I'm not a Catholic, Morgan, but I know, know what a Catholic mass looks like and sounds like. That doesn't appear to be one, though. Am I wrong? What does that appear to be to you?
It's a very good question, Leon. And to begin with, I wasn't sure. The people there strike me of being of the Islamic faith. And I didn't want to make any presumptions when I first saw this video because, Leon, let's be real. The optics look terrible. Large crowds of Islamic people wearing black clothing surrounding a Catholic cathedral. The optics are that of intimidation and dominance. But I didn't want to jump to that conclusion. So I reached out to a friend of mine. She's actually a Sunni Muslim from Saudi Arabia, and I asked what is going on here, and I learned that this is a ritual whereby people of the Islamic faith get together to mourn a certain individual who was killed in Iraq, somebody that is significant to their prophet. And I said, okay, that's fair enough. That sounds like a ritual that could be in any given faith. And of course in Judaism there's the Day of Atonement and so much more. But I said, but that doesn't answer the question. Why were they gathered around a church? To which my friend responded to me, well, the goal is to conduct a public display of mourning. And there are even cases where these individuals observing this ritual, they beat themselves, and in some cases they beat themselves with blunt instruments, or potentially even worse, as a way of expressing their sorrow. But that still didn't explain why did they choose to surround this church. And Leon, I have looked for answers, I have asked questions, and nobody has been able to actually tell me. And when answers cannot be obtained, it leaves us with only one thing, and that of course is speculation. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, are the optics what was going on there? Was this an act of intimidation and dominance or not? And I asked the question, did the church invite them to be there? And quite frankly, if the answer to that question is no, then I say that there is absolutely no good reason to surround a church in that manner. And if indeed it was for less than genuine, decent intentions, then it needs to be called out. But I don't know, Leon. I don't know. This is honestly as far as I could get. I found out what was going on in terms of the ritual, but the intent to being there, I just don't know. What do you think?
Maybe they were looking to audition as choir boys, possibly. But my understanding is, I mean, you mentioned your friend is Sunni. She's from Saudi Arabia. My understanding is this is a Shia ritual.
Shia.
So it's from
Correct,
another
yes.
Islamic sect. And I think these people, I would suspect, might be under the Iranian sphere of influence, because Iran's the dominant Shia country, and they're mourning. I think his name is Hussein, who they deem to be the rightful heir of Muhammad, and he was assassinated by Muhammad's rivals, who who were the descendants, became the followers of the Sunni sect. So they mourn his martyrdom. So they walk around, they beat their chests as a sign of mourning, and as you mentioned, they use blunt instruments. Sometimes they even stab themselves. I think in London and in the Middle East, you'll see such displays where they're covered in blood to honor his martyrdom and try to emulate his self-sacrifice for his own beliefs. But it doesn't. The optics, as you said, it doesn't look good. It looks like it was, if you were to look at it from a superficial level, an act of intimidation. I don't know if any other religion would do it. Hindus. I haven't seen Sikhs do it. I haven't seen Jews do it. I haven't seen Presbyterians or Mormons or Amish surround other people's places of worship like that.
Well, I've never seen any group here in Australia surround another somebody's place of worship. Another remark made to me by my Sunni friend, and this is all through my friend. She told me that the same ritual is commemorated in Sunni culture, but for different reasons, and recognizing different figures in the Islamic faith, and opposed to the Shias. The processions are conducted in private, and she told me that her and her colleagues and members of her community consider the public display to be detrimental overall to the image of Islam, and that was coming from her as a practicing Sunni Muslim.
And it is, I don't know if it's coincidental, but the timing of that was right after the firebombing of the synagogue in East Melbourne. It was about 48 hours after. What do you make of those events of Friday, July 4th, that night? There were 3 different incidents, I would say, attacks. One was on an Israeli restaurant. Another one was on what people claim, I don't know much about this business, claims to be a weapons manufacturer in Greensborough, and the third one was obviously the firebombing of the East Melbourne synagogue.
What do I make of it? I make that these attacks need to be taken seriously. There are people out there who deny the seriousness of this climate, but quite frankly, Leon, we're seeing attacks on the Jewish community reminiscent of the days of Nazi Germany leading up to the crescendo of World War II. And it's disgusting to see. All people here in Australia, that of course, including the Melbourne Jewish community and Jewish communities everywhere, deserve to live in peace. And they contribute just like everybody else, and have done so, for the record, everybody listening, since the first fleet. And to see this blatant rise in anti-Semitism, not just in online discourse, which has descended to levels below the gutter, but now manifesting in violent acts of terror, it's something that I didn't think we would see in this country. And I hope that Victoria Police is taking it seriously and monitoring these people, because we are seeing a trend emerging that is, I consider to be terrorism, that is targeting a specific group of Australians in this country, right, who happen to be members of the Jewish community. So what do I make of it? I think it needs to be addressed, and perpetrators must be investigated and dealt with to the fullest extent of the law possible, with the strongest possible ramifications and charges. And I'd say that each of these incidents, as far as definitions are concerned, I'm not a lawyer, but violence and intimidation and thuggery and vandalism in the pursuit of an ideological cause or to suppress a religious group or an ethnic group, and of course Jews are both a religious and an ethnic group, as far as I'm concerned, that constitutes terrorism. And we need to actually see some terrorism charges laid out, because the greater extent to which these serious charges are not applied, the more emboldened these disgusting people will become. And Leon, that's not the sort of thing that I want to be seeing in our country.
And there's a saying, first they came for the Saturday people, then they came for the Sunday people. And I'm just, this attack happened on Friday night, which was, this Jewish Sabbath starts on Friday night. And then this church incident, I couldn't help but notice, it wasn't exactly Sunday. I believe it was on a Monday, but I couldn't help notice, the so-called coincidence between the two. And I couldn't help, and I want to preface, I have a lot of respect for Senator Ralph Babet. I know him personally. I've worked with him. I've seen him up close. He's got an excellent work ethic. He's done a lot of great things. But on this point, he tweeted right after the firebombing. His response was the firebombing wasn't to express sympathy for the Jewish community. He made an equation between the Jewish community and the culprits that attacked them, and basically gave them an ultimatum. He didn't mention Jews specifically, but he was purporting to refer to both parties, saying you either convert or to Christianity, my faith, or you leave. And then not long after this incident happened, and Ralph Babet is Catholic, this incident happened at the biggest Catholic cathedral in Australia, where a group of Muslims, as we just played, surrounded the cathedral. So I couldn't help but notice it, and Ralph Babet tweeted in response, "Oh, what's going on here?" That was his response to that incident, but he didn't say anything else. But I find it interesting also that many people in the freedom movement, including Senator Ralph Babet, talk about civil liberties, the importance of freedom of expression and civil liberties. And then one moment he's talking about that, then the next moment he's giving Jewish people an ultimatum to leave the country or convert. So I'm scratching my head and I'm wondering what on earth is going on. And by the way, that synagogue is over 150 years old. So, I couldn't help notice the irony of a senator who claims to be for civil liberties. He just got off, I'm sorry to say this, recently, relatively speaking, if you compare a 150-year-old synagogue, he's an immigrant. He recently basically just got off the boat from Mauritius, and he's telling this community to go back to where they came from or convert. Look, I've went on a rant. I'm digressing, but what do you make of that?
Yeah, I know Ralph personally. I like Ralph. I like a lot of the work he's done. I'm not in his head, so I don't know exactly what he was thinking with this post. It's certainly not how I would handle responding to these incidents, asking people to, demanding people to convert to a certain religion. I think that it would be perhaps some clarification would be in order. But yeah, this is, I guess, his interpretation of events that he's expressing there. It's not the way that I would do it. It's not the way that I responded. My go-to is to condemn people in those circumstances. I think that attacks on religious institutions and communities are something that need to be called out straight up, which is exactly what I did. And in Australia, we are meant to have the freedom of religion for people to practice their faith free from persecution. And we've seen now in the Jewish community that Jewish people do not feel comfortable to practice their faith. And that is something that I think every representative should be actually calling out and identifying it for what it is. I know that I've been doing it on my social media, and guess what, Leon? Like I've received a lot of backlash for that, just for simply stating that attacking a certain community is wrong, and you should see the vile abuse that gets thrown at my way from various members of the public. It's absolutely disgusting. And yeah, the second point about the cathedral, I mean, questions need to be asked, and we need to get to the bottom of what is going on here. You know, as I said, I'm not in Senator Babette's head. I don't know exactly what he was referring to, or who he was referring to, or if he was implying something. It's not exactly clear to me. But in my humble view, where there exists, in my opinion, terrorizing and terrorism, it needs to be called out. So it's probably the best take I can give you.
I think, and this is again more conjecture and opinion on my part, but I think if you're a politician, a senator, you have a responsibility to communicate clearly and not in a roundabout way. And if you want to say something, you say it, be upfront and say it, and don't allow people to second guess and try to read through the lines of what you're saying.
Yeah, right. I do know the post, and to be honest, I couldn't tell you what exactly it means. So
sure.
I hear you, Leon, and it's a crazy time, isn't it? It's a crazy time. We've seen some very left of center, not politically left, commentary coming from members of parliament, former members of parliament, people with public profiles, many of whom have maybe watched a few YouTube videos and think that they're now geopolitical experts on the intricate workings of Middle Eastern politics and war. And it's I think it's sad, to be honest with you, to see many uneducated opinions out there just jumping on a narrative because they think it's popular and it will bring them lots of engagement, and perhaps not necessarily realizing the damage that they're causing. What do you think?
Well, I was reading a Facebook post by Beck Freedom. She calls herself Beck Freedom. So I don't know her personally.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
She makes a lot of great content. I like her content, but I've never met her. But she recently posted about, in a nutshell, about what she terms to be Jewish lobbyists trying to cancel a event led by Jamie McIntyre, organized by Jamie McIntyre.
Isn't that that's the bankrupt real estate fraud? Is that, or am I thinking of something else?
I don't know if he's. I don't know. I know that he had some issues in the past he had some. I think he had some legal troubles in the past. I'm not fully across that though, but I understand.
Okay. Yeah.
I know that he comes from a property developer background, and
maybe
I know that
he's McIntyre I'm thinking of. I'm not sure. Sorry, Leon. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. So he's he's a political pundit. He's an influencer, and he's a businessman, entrepreneur, and he's hosting this freedom event with many different speakers. I believe one of which features Stu Peters. Stu Peters, incidentally, called for a final solution against the Jews, and Beck shared a meme.
Mm-hmm.
She shared a meme of someone that criticized this event. So he put together a meme highlighting that, some of these speakers were anti-Israel. But interesting, and she used that as an example of Jews trying to shut down free speech. Now, the kicker here is the guy that put that meme together. I know him. I actually like the guy. He's a top bloke. Isn't Jewish. So he's not Jewish. Okay. But she used that as an example of Jewish people trying to shut down free speech, take our freedoms away. Now, that reminds me, because during the lockdowns, I didn't get the jab. and the government, the establishment were blaming the unvaccinated. They said, it's because of them, this group, you're not going to get your freedoms. They've taken your freedoms away. So that was one psyop. So I was on the receiving end. So are you, and so are a majority of the people that are watching this. We're all on the receiving end of that psyop. Now we're dealing with a different type of psyop, and in my opinion, and there's going to be some triggered people watching this, I know, but in my opinion, you replace the unvaccinated with Jews, and now they're on the receiving end, and they're being blamed for taking away people's freedoms. And incidentally, the establishment that was running the psyop during COVID was a socialist state Labor government. And here too, we've got the socialist state Labor government running a psyop where Jews are being singled out. But the only difference is you've got, not everyone, but you've got certain elements of the freedom movement who have fallen for this psyop.
Wow. A lot to unpack there, Leon, but this is how I see it. And I agree with you, apart from one word. I would say that Jews are mostly not being singled out, rather collectively blamed as a group. And that I think is the basis for the anti-Semitism mind virus. And even that term will enrage people. They will shake with anger. But that's what it is. It's a mind virus that effectively replaces critical thinking and analytical thought processes with collective group blame. While A, B, and C got shut down, it's because of the Jews. There's a bad immigration policy, yet you can blame the Jews as well. And I've been seeing this all over the internet, and people, many people who I thought were critical thinkers who were able to actually decipher between just blatant propaganda and objective reasoning have drunk the Kool-Aid and have entered this space. Now, here's an unpopular opinion, but during the height of COVID, there were a lot of people in the freedom movement who were blaming everything on the Freemasons. Okay. Now, personally, I've never met any Freemasons. I don't know anything about their organization, but I thought that it was not fair to cast collective group blame on an entire group of people, whereas I'm sure you've got plenty of decent folk in there. Again, I don't know anything about the organization, but you've got, guys on the lower levels and so forth. Are they really responsible for all the world's problems? I would say absolutely not. And so we saw from the government blaming all the problems on society, the loss of freedom, the loss of trading, the breakdown in the economy, the loss of movement was all blamed on the unvaccinated. And yeah, we're seeing many people from the freedom movement taking that same non-critical line of thinking and applying it to Jews, and it's very sad to see, and it's very pathetic. But that's how anti-Semitism works. It's based on collective group blame, which is an easy to digest narrative for simple-minded people seeking simple solutions to complex problems, and it's based on kind of eliminating the individualism from an entire group of people in replacement of almost like some type of monolithic caricature where they all think the same, they all do the same, and they can all be equally blamed for whatever the problem is at hand. And it's also based on, I would say, hyper-selective outrage. So taking a figure who both you and I and most reasonable people would agree is terrible, such as Jeffrey Epstein, terrible, George Soros, terrible, but say pinning up these examples and saying, look, this is what Jews are. This is what they are, and they all think the same. And in times of economic downturn, tough times, there are people that are looking for simple narratives, and the anti-Semitism mind virus is something that we see comes up time and time again throughout history, and kind of serves that purpose as an outlet for blame and resentment and just equating problems to something. And yeah, it's an absolute load of BS. and it's wrong. And to cast blame on an entire group of people, that's a definition of hatred. To target individuals, that is more along the lines of critical thinking. So that's my position on the matter.
And interestingly, you mentioned George Soros before, and a lot of these people that don't like Jews use him as a poster boy. But the interesting fact about him is he hates Jews. He hates Israel. He funds a lot of the pro-Palestine stuff.
Yeah.
And he also collaborated with the Nazis. He's an unaffiliated Jew. He, gave up on his faith a long time ago. It was his parents. He got that from his parents. Yeah. He collaborated with the Nazis when he was 14 years old. He confiscated property. During a 16 minutes interview in 1999, they asked him if he regretted that, and he said no, and he had a very cold, demonic look to him.
I remember that interview, yeah.
And he openly hates Jews. I know through the grapevine that someone in the 90s, an Orthodox Jew, got a job at his hedge fund, and he was told by his direct report not to mention his religion, not to talk about his religion at work. He was warned. So
exactly right.
Using George Soros as a poster boy to prove your point that Jews are, conspiring together to dominate the world is not a very good example, to use considering his history.
Well, exactly right. And that comes down to that hyper-selective outrage, like looking at George Soros. I also saw this meme getting circulated around, and there's so many like them out there right now. And it read something to the effect of every aspect of the COVID-19 vaccine is Jewish. I don't know if you've seen this meme. And they've got like a picture of Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. There's like some guy from like the CDC, but it leaves out key figures like Tedros from the World Health Organization, Anthony Fauci. And so I saw somebody post this meme, I think it was on Telegram or somewhere, and like all these comments were just like, yeah, we knew it was the Jews, and like they're all just like egging each other on with just like rage and blame. And I'm just sitting and looking at it, it's like, don't you people realize like there's at least two key figures missing here, all right? And have you looked into the board of Moderna and who the shareholders are, etc.? And it was just like seeing name's gone blank. Author of George Orwell, what he referred to as groupthink, or what Douglas Murray referred to as the madness of crowds. Great novel. Go out and read it if you want to understand how mind viruses work. And yeah, it's almost like you can't believe what you're seeing, because you think, are these people really that intellectually low functioning, or are they willingly overlooking the basic shortfalls in the argument in order to join an outrage mob for just like the sake of finding an answer, even if the answer is not based on common sense, evidence, or facts? What do you reckon?
I mean, there's two other similarities between the COVID psyop and what we're seeing today. In the COVID psyop, we had fake fabricated videos coming out of China, out of Europe, out of Italy, purporting to show people dying from COVID, people collapsing. A lot of people in the freedom movement recognized that these were staged. This was fake.
Correct. Yeah.
And now fast forward to present day, post October 7th, we're getting a lot of fake images from Gaza, staged images. There's an industry called Pallywood. Go and look it up if you're watching. Well documented. It's most of it's staged. They also use images from other conflicts like Syria and natural disasters, earthquakes in Turkey and other parts of the world, and claim that it's from Gaza. They take these children out of the rubble, and it's really from another country. And yet people in the freedom movement are falling for it hook, line, and sinker. And then another thing, and you're going to get that in the comments, this is pre-recorded, but I'm not a prophet, but I can imagine in the comments people are going to say false flag. The Jews have organized, false flag attacks against their own synagogues. That they'll mention that the caravan plot. Well, with the caravan plot, again, you've got a socialist government in power. in New South Wales on a state level, and you've got a socialist government on a federal level, and they're covering. They are pro-Palestinian. They're quite openly anti-Israel, and they're covering for the other side. And so they claim that it's a false flag, but there's one minor detail. The perpetrator of that caravan plot happens to be an Arab Muslim with a history of Jew hatred. So it's just a minor detail that people are missing. And unfortunately, some people on the right, on the conservative side, on the libertarian side, are jumping up and down and saying, oh, well, this is a false flag.
Yeah, true. And there were people directing a lot of comments like that at me, Leon, when I the other week called out the attacks on the Jewish community, the restaurant, the synagogue. There was also some really horrible graffiti near the Holocaust Museum in Elsternwick, just up the road. It was like an image of Ned Kelly standing in front of the Black Sun, which is a Nazi symbol. That, yeah, definitely the intent behind the artwork, not lost on me, maybe lost on some other people. But here's the thing, right? Have there been Jewish people who have conducted what we could refer to as false flag activities, who like a Jesse Smollett fake hate crime? Yes, there has been. Yes, that is a fact that has happened. There have been Jewish guys, let's say over the past few years or whatever, that went and carried out, a fake like anti-Semitic hate crime for stupid reasons. But the fact of the matter remains that these guys represent a tiny fraction of attacks on the Jewish community. So for anyone, it's kind of like this. If the attack is false 1% of the time, but legitimate 99% of the time, then what logical reason do people have when they see an attack on the Jewish community to jump up and down and say, oh, well, the Jews have done it to themselves? You see what I mean? They're taking a false flag that happens such a minuscule percentage of the time, blowing that out of proportion to come to a position which is so illogical, so insane, that because something happened, once in 100 times, therefore it must be happening every time. You're listening to me, like there's no thought process here. This is a breakdown in intellect. This is a destruction of analytical thinking replaced with emotional, non-thinking, reactionary responses, which can be attributed to the mind virus of which we're talking about, in my humble opinion.
So quite a lot to unpack there and discuss. But Morgan, I just want to touch on one other topic, a very controversial, very sad, horrific topic, totally different to what we're discussing now, and that's daycare. Now, I very rarely disagree with you, Morgan. I don't think I've ever disagreed with you, but this is going to be the exception. You said that you want to ban men from daycare.
Only as working in the capacity of early learning, early childhood educators.
I never knew you're anti-man. Man.
No, I'm not.
Man ban.
I'm not anti-man. No, not at all. I just look at the facts, Leon, and I see that the massive disparity in offenders and certain characteristics of who they are when it comes to crimes against children, and it's a mathematical certainty that if we pulled men out of working in the capacity of, I think the correct position title is early learning educator. Look, I know it's controversial and it would punish a lot of innocent men, but objectively speaking, it would make our childcare centres safer places.
Yeah,
That's
main
my
reason why I
position,
have to disagree with you on that is because women have also been arrested for abuse. We actually had a recent case, in many cases in Australia and overseas. 2 women were arrested in, I think it was Western Sydney, for abusing and assaulting a 17-month-old child. And you see There was another video that went viral of a woman slapping a child as well in another incident, and you can hear another woman filming it and laughing in the background. And then women are also not just capable of physical abuse. Unfortunately, they're also capable of sexual abuse. So my fear is this might be just the Band-Aid solution. I think there are deeper underlying issues that need to be addressed here.
I agree. I agree that there are deeper underlying issues, and some of it comes down to lack of training and just filling roles with people who are very new to this country, who have no passion and no real care or interest for taking care of our young vulnerable toddlers who are just simply looking for a paycheck. And they could be at a childcare center, or they could be a cleaner, and they wouldn't. To them, it's just like a job and very almost like working in a production line, and that is a massive problem. I don't disagree. Women, of course, can be abusers, and they are abusers, but data shows that when it comes to sexual crimes against children, as high as 90 to, I believe, 98% of offenders, based on studies which I'm happy to send you, I don't have them offhand, do end up becoming men. So my position, I suppose, is based on not based on eliminating these offences. Of course, in a perfect world, we'd love that, but that's just not possible. To me, in my mind, it comes down to risk mitigation. There's always a risk. Any parent who leaves their child in childcare, there is a risk that child will be abused. However, in the absence of males working as early learning educators, that risk is mitigated and reduced. And so I can fully understand a lot of people disagreed with my position, but I look at it as a game of percentages and probability. And in my view, anytime we can reduce the probability of one of these heinous crimes being committed against a child, to me, that is a step in the right direction.
And I think, look, I don't think it's a coincidence. This horrific case of abuse with that man, I think he, abused hundreds of children in daycare. It was over 70. It was an astronomically big number. Even one is one too many. It happened in a state which has the most woke education system, not just in Australia, but arguably in the entire world, where they teach pure sexual perversion, and they brainwash children as young as toddlers with this poisonous garbage. So I don't think it's a coincidence. And another thing is, we've got a situation where we've got a society with both mum and dad have to go out to work in order to survive, and they can't, the mother can no longer stay at home to look after the children. So I think all of those things have created this perfect storm.
You're 100% correct, and it's tragic. Leon, how many parents out there miss their child's first word? How many parents miss their child taking their first step, or formulating their first sentence, making their first observation, asking their first question? Is a career worth it? I don't think so. But of course, the state of affairs in our country, we're worse off as opposed to the 80s. Albanese and these fraudsters like to talk about how strong the economy is, but as far as I'm concerned, the only economic factors that mean anything are factors like household disposable income, cost of living, what percentage of somebody's wage is required to pay their rent. The government can talk about GDP, and GDP per capita means absolutely nothing to the standard of life, the quality of life, and the purpose that everyday people are able to derive from this incredible gift called life. It's an assault on people. It's communistic in nature. It strips the nation of its soul. We get left with institutions which are money pits, such as the industry that we're just talking about. And it's sad, and it's not the world that we dream of.
Now, for the audience tonight, guys, if you're watching, please go out, follow Morgan C Jonas on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram. Have I missed anything? Rumble, YouTube?
Rumble, YouTube, yeah. Haven't been on there for
all
a while.
the platforms.
But I'm planning to fire back up. I'm planning to get my old show back up and running, Leon. If you remember the MCJ report,
That's right. Yes, that was an awesome show. You should do it. Definitely.
I'll get you on
Reignite
as a
it.
guest.
There you go. I owe you one. I owe you a couple. Morgan, is there any other final words you'd like to share with our audience?
It's a good question. Stay safe out there, everyone. You know, anyone out there who's been feeling very it's the right word. I was about to say a word, but I think then I figured it sounded patronizing. I guess anyone feeling very passionate about certain topics, getting upset, just try to be a bit more analytical. Understand that not everything is as it appears. Understand that in any story there's three sides: side A, side B, and then the truth is sometimes in the middle, sometimes closer towards A or B. Like nothing is black and white in this world. We live in a very complex, nuanced world, and just don't jump on easy to digest bandwagons, because you know, that, in my opinion, creates the downfall of civilized societies. And you can take that however you want. You know, you can hate me for saying it. You can go and abuse me on the internet, but it is of my heart of hearts what I believe to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God, and do with it as you will.
Wise words. Morgan, thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I'd love to have you back on again. And everyone that's watching, thank you so much for watching. God bless and have a good evening.
See you, my man.